you were here last week, we were looking at 1 Kings last week, and last week we looked at the life of Solomon, didn't we? And that's about him. And now we're going to look at the kings. And when you read the Bible, well, I used to, when I first read it, I felt bad when you skip bits, but sometimes it repeats itself, the Bible, and it's not that I got it wrong, but like it said this is going to happen, it said this happened. And then there's a bit when Solomon builds a temple, and it's like this long description of how he's to build this temple. Now you can skip those bits, it's okay. Sometimes you feel, I used to feel bad skipping it, but actually it's okay, because you're probably going to get bored reading like the building instructions of the temple. So you can do that. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through the life of these kings in a bit of a quick fashion, really. It's going to be a roller coaster of life. And there's repeated sayings that happen to these kings. So put your hand up if you're willing to do a reading for me. And it's basically all these different kings. Some of you get their names. There we go. Oops, sorry. I couldn't find any scissors, that's why the scrappy paper. There we go. Should we just go? It doesn't matter what order we go. It's basically, when it says he, it's talking about one of the kings. And you're not really going to remember all these kings' names, so that's not important. So when I come to that, we're going to read those out. Okay, before I do that, I'm going to tell you that life, yeah, it flows in a direction, doesn't it? You know, like streams, all the streams, they run from the top of the hills, don't they? And the water, all it flows and it ends up in the sea. And life's a bit like that. And the way that life flows, it flows against God. And it flows against the things of God. And that happened when the fall happened. So in the Garden of Eden, everything was good. And it was flowing in the right direction, really, of good. But then when man fell and chose to go with their own way, they fell. And now the life really is flowing away from God. Okay, things flow in that direction. And that's what it's like for the kings. The kings like exacerbate, make that happen. Life, the way they rule is away from God, these kings that we find. And they did evil in the eyes of the Lord, that it tells us. And that phrase, they did evil in the eyes of the Lord, is repeated again and again for the kings. And also the kings, it says they caused Israel, that's the place where they're ruling, they caused Israel to sin. And often they say that one king, yeah, had a son, and that son followed in his father's footsteps. And these are repeated phrases for the kings that happen again and again. They did evil in the eyes of the Lord. They caused Israel to sin. And they walked in the way of their fathers in their sin. So now we're going to have to read these. Who's got one with chapter 15 on it? Here, Alan.
He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and walked in the way of his father, and in his sin which made Israel to sin.
Yeah. Anyone got chapters? Any other 15s?
One here.
Yeah.
He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and walked in the way of...
Is it Jeroboam?
Yes, that's the one.
That was like the first king after Solomon was bit.
Okay,
Jeroboam.
And in his sin which he made Israel to sin.
Yeah. Any 16s? Oh, 2 over 3. You go along, so Colin, Gemma, then George.
Only did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and did more evil than all who were before him.
This is exactly the same?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Because of his sins that he committed, doing evil in the sight of the Lord, walking away in the way of Jeroboam, and through the sins which he committed, making Israel to sin.
Okay. Then Julie.
He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and walked in the way of his father, and in the way of his mother, and in the way of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel sin.
So you can see there. Oh, sorry. Look, you also.
Ahab said to Elijah, "Have you found me, O my enemy?" He answered, "I have found you because you sold yourself through what is evil in the sight of the Lord."
Yeah. So you heard that repeated phrase, didn't you? You know those evil in the sight of the Lord, caused Israel to sin. There's lots of these repeated phrases about these kings. And they didn't seem to be good kings, did they? That's the general vibe we have. We had Solomon, who was a mixture, wasn't he? Then the country split, and there was a northern kingdom of Israel and a southern kingdom of Judah. So sometimes there was a king in Israel and a king in Judah. They often had little fights and big fights and mucking about. And these kings that we heard about, they're kings of Judah and kings of Israel. So I've got a chart for you. I know you all like charts. So Stacey Park, this is Israel's kings. It's just from 1 Kings. There's a book called 2 Kings as well. We can look at that maybe another week. But it's 1 Kings. Is that kings in Israel, okay, the non-kingdom. So there's our first one, Jeroboam, okay. And what he did is he was worried that people from his kingdom in the north were going to want to go worship in the south. So he's like, oh, let's create some golden calves for people to worship. That'd be a good idea. And then he said also, he created this special day of worship in a time of a month for people to worship at. And he also, the Levites, God said the Levites should be the priests in the temple, but he just picked any old people to. Yeah, you can be a priest, you can be a priest. So Jeroboam basically made up this whole worship. He created some images to worship. He created a special time of the month that you worship. And then he also created some priests in the church. So he set up this whole different type of worship. Then these are all the sons of him that follow the line of his king. So we had Nahab, basically he did what his dad did. Then you have Baasha, who did what his granddad did, so basically what his dad did as well, isn't it? Then you see there you got Elah. He says he created idols causing Israel to sin. Then Zimri, now this guy is a king, yeah? And he was his commander. But when this guy, he was king, and he was drunk, he came and killed him. And then became king. And that was nice. Then Omri, said that lots of bad stuff's going on, but Omri says then he did more evil than all those before him. So, not looking good. Then you had Ahab, and he served Baal, which is like a false god at the time. He made a altar to him. And he said that he treated idolatry and false gods as a light thing, just something you do, really. It's not a big deal. And he did more to provoke God's anger than all those other kings before him. He married, Solomon was marrying foreign wives that he wasn't allowed to. And then Ahab is a bit of a stroppy guy. He wanted this vineyard, but so he went to, who's the guy who owned the vineyard? Naboth. Went to Naboth and said, "Oh, can I have your vineyard?" I said, "No, over my dead body," type thing. So that's what his wife did. His wife killed the owner of the vineyard so he could have that vineyard. He also worshipped idols. And also, Ahaziah, is that? And he walked in the ways of his parents and made Israel sin. He served Baal and he inquired of false gods. And then Judah, so that's all up in the north, and that's over a good period of time. Yeah, these kings got Rehoboam, and he had high places where they worshipped, pillars they worshipped, Asherim, cult prostitutes, and that was because they had you receive a prostitute at the temple, and they're thinking it made the ground fertile and your life fertile, the idea of fertility. And so that's some sort of weird god worship they got into. And he got gold and silver was taken from him, from the temple and that. Then what's that? Abijam. he did all the sins of his father, not wholly true to the Lord, and God said he sort of didn't like him, but he allowed him to stay for David's sake, because David years back was a good king. Now Asa and Jehoshaphat, these two basically, in the whole list of all those kings, these are the good kings. Okay, they actually got rid of all that idolatry, got rid of that cult prostitution, got rid of all that stuff, and made peace with their neighbours as well. And they were true to God, but they even let these high places of worship still remain. So even though they were good, they didn't do the total job of Saul now. So there we have. We have this slide of sin, and this slide of you can twist it off now, this slide of all the kings. Some of them were into golden calves, some of them were into different types of idolatry, but they all did idolatry, yeah? They all didn't encourage people to worship God, but to inquire of other gods. And basically the general flow was away from God. And we see that in our hearts too. So we see that in these kings who ruled in the Bible, their flow of life was away from God. But it's true for our hearts as well. Our hearts generally flow away from God. So we are born selfish, aren't we? We're born selfish people. So when there's two babies, they don't cry for the other person to have milk, do they? No, they cry for their own milk, and that's how they understand life. And that just continues, and it gets bigger and bigger. We don't want milk anymore, we want other things, don't we, to please us. And not that we shouldn't feed our babies milk, obviously. And so there's our hearts that are selfish really by nature, by birth, and that continue in that. And then all around us in the world, there is a plethora, funny word, isn't it? There's a load of idols, isn't there? There's lots of things we can make idols. We can make God instead of God. And you know what? All the people around us also are quite selfish. So we assess ourselves next to them and think, it's not selfishness really, it's just doing that and that. So it makes it easy. So it's easy for the flow to be away from God. So it's true of these kings, the general flows away from God. It's true in your hearts that they generally flow away from God until God would intervene. And then, we can say that our country generally flows away from God. Now, sometimes countries are moving towards God, aren't they? Some countries are in a state of revival where people become believers. But in this country, we're generally flowing away from God. Now, if someone you feel comfortable talking to next to you, or if you don't want to, you can just ignore each other, or sit quietly. Sometimes you don't have to, if you don't feel comfortable talking about a subject, you don't have to, basically I'm saying. But for the next 2 minutes, ask the person next to yours, mention, what do you think in this country is flowing away from God? So said, the kings and their idols are flowing away from God, aren't they? They're doing idol worship. Our hearts are flowing away from God. What things can we see as evidence in the country that the country is flowing away from God? Is everyone clear what they're going to chat about? If you're not, ask about the weather. Loads of things.
Yeah.
Colleagues.
Governments, authorities, councils.
Yeah, the government, and any specifics? Any?
Scottish National Party.
Scottish National Party, yes, Alexander. Disunity, maybe. Yeah? Yeah, he's even. Okay.
Now, the council work today, would they have their mottos in the old days? Would they do that today?
What's that mean? Thank God we trust, yeah. And the Sussex, what's the Lord Sussex Uni's motto?
Still a no, but do you know what, most of them don't know where that's from with the Bible. When I did a degree up there, I said, but oh, look, this thing I've got in class. And I said, most of the professors don't know what that is. That's why they took it away. Because if people don't know, it's like knowledge.
Yeah, rather than know.
Yeah.
I think the end bit that I know I'm on.
Yeah, they don't know that bit. It's just these things they know, like worship and knowledge rather than
So our institutions wouldn't be established in the same way we've done now. There's Christian heritage, but we see that being eroded.
Yes, values.
Values, yeah? Anyone's?
Well, marriage is the
An example, current example,
Yeah.
being eroded, Christian marriage.
It's true, isn't it? And Sundays, not that we all have like an idea of how we should do things on a Sunday, but there was a general sense of a Sunday being set apart, wasn't there? Which is just gone really. Money's more important now, isn't it, than work, than family, all those other values. Yeah, and people's attitude even just to Christianity, maybe, and to God. I don't know if you felt that over time. People maybe that aren't so open to Christianity, maybe, or more opposed to Christianity in our country. As time's gone by.
In 1940, the King announced a national day of prayer.
In 1940.
1940, threat invasion. I just wondered if our country was at such great threat today, would that same call go out?
No, it's probably not likely, is it? And our understanding of prayer would be different now, wouldn't it? Yeah, there's God. So yes, we see that, don't we? We see something in the country of it flowing away from God as well. So we have this phrase that's repeated over often of all the bad kings we see. It says that they did evil in the eyes of the Lord. Now, often we can understand what evil is and bad stuff is, but sometimes we can be subjective of what actually is evil. Well, here we have this phrase, evil in the... Jade's on fire. Evil in the eyes of the Lord. In the eyes of the Lord. And which means, because sometimes we can look around at us, and we probably wouldn't use this word. If we look around and think, I'm not going around. That one, Grenville's evil. Hey, Grenville's evil. But that's in my eyes, isn't it? My eyes, Grenville is evil. Now, because we're nice, we wouldn't use the word evil, but we might say, you know Grenville, the other day he did blah, 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 blah. So basically we're sort of saying he's evil without being so harsh. But often we don't. Often we're accepting of one another's behaviour, aren't we? A lot of the time we say, oh, no, that person's not evil, that's all right, and we give reasons for things. So in this society, maybe, they probably didn't think the kings were particularly evil, this idol worship they were doing, other things. Some of them maybe did. But here the phrase is there was evil in the eyes of the Lord, yeah? And the eyes of the Lord, what are the differences from the eyes of the Lord, is obviously we're not to get to be this place. We don't get to be God, do we? And particularly see how God views things. But we can see that God sees things from a broader perspective than we see things, yeah? Often when we see things, we see what we see, and maybe what we hear a bit from other people. But maybe we're looking at how we view it, and how it affects us, particularly. But when we look in the eyes of the Lord, He sees how things affect everyone, yeah? And you know what? He doesn't see how it affects everyone, but He sees how it affects future generations as well, doesn't He? Think of that mindset. It's a very different mindset. When we say something's evil, then we can maybe see that. But when God sees something, He sees something from how it impacts all the people around you, or also even future generations. Such a broader view of evil. Our phrase that we often repeat, isn't it? It's okay as long as I'm not hurting anyone. You know that? It's okay as long as I'm not hurting anyone. But the sins of the kings, what did they do? It was one of the phrases. The sins of the kings, they caused Israel to sin. And that's the problem here, that their sin caused other people to sin. So you can say that, well, my sin is fine as long as it doesn't hurt anyone. But we can't really be aware of that. It's only when we look with God's eyes that we can see the full impact of our sin. So if we take, for example, the sin of laziness, yeah? It's been a lazy person. So it's lazy. Now, you might say, it's okay as long as it doesn't hurt anyone, yeah? That's fine. And in itself, you probably not hurt anyone laying in your bed, yeah? That's right. No one's physically being hurt from you laying there. It's fine, or whatever you do, or whatever this person, this imaginary person I'm looking at. So it's not actually anyone. But then if you look a bit closer at the picture, and you look at his family, maybe his family, this person's got someone else doing all the work around him, and that's hurting that person, so that person has to rush around and do all the work, maybe it's all the washing up, I don't know, but they have to do all this work. And so it hurts the family, doesn't it? It's not, even though they might be not actually going to hurt anyone, it does have an impact on her family. And if you look at it wider, the community. Now the community, this person doesn't live in isolation, and none of us live in isolation. We all live around other people. So this person being lazy would be seen by other people, and therefore there would be an example of a way of behaving that would become to be more accepted. We think, oh, that's all right, he does that, I can do that, maybe we can all do that. And so it affects the community. And then also it hurts our nation as well, because it's communities live together and people have attitudes and hearts that affect the way the whole country is. It's not just you and your own life, but it's all of our lives coming together that as they interact with one another, it makes a difference. And then the way we are affects how laws are made and how attitudes and people's mindsets are. And things that get, now it spreads even quicker, and opinion changes even quicker with social media, doesn't it? As people's opinion knocks on. And that flows to the next generation. So you might think, well, this one thing I'm doing here doesn't hurt anyone. But in fact, it does hurt people, but it's not going to hurt them in the way you see it. So when you do this sin, then bang, you see, oh, that's hurt someone. Some of our sin's like that, isn't it? We do something and it hurts someone when we see it. But a lot of our sin, we sin, but we don't see its ramifications in our country, and we don't see it in our communities particularly, but it happens, and it happens over time, and it flows things away from God. And what happens is, the way you live, yeah, the next generation will take things on from that and live that way. Like the kings, the following kings walked in the way of their fathers. Ezra, if you make a lot of noise, you have to go out, okay? So sit quietly, please. Good boy. And then this resulted in God being angry with their sin, and God being jealous, because people were worshipping false gods in the kings, weren't they? They were worshipping golden calves and all these things. So the way we live, it affects us, and it also affects other people around us. You can't believe the lie that if it doesn't hurt anyone, it's okay, because you can't really see. It probably is hurting people in the eyes of the Lord. And in our sin, we are robbing the community from being the way it should be. And when we complain about our community, when we complain about our nation, we have to sometimes look inside ourselves and see, well, how have I affected this? How have I added to this flow away from God? So that's the first thing we can learn from the kings. We're doing three things, so we're a third of the way through. The second one is, our hearts are idol factories. What is an idol? Okay, an idol is something you worship, something you love and adore and give your time and attention to. And in this day, they were things that we wouldn't really particularly use as idols. So golden calves. Anyone here worship golden calves? Got one in your bedroom that you bow down to in the morning? No? Or an Asherah pole? Who's got one of those in their garden? No? They look like they've got one at the Mosque in Prime, don't they? They're big pole things. But I don't think it's idolatry. I don't think we get the kids to bow to it. Well, I hope they don't. Not yet, no. So, our idols often aren't like that, are they? That's not what they were. They were like that for the kings. They had golden calves. They also did cult prostitution, forbidden marriages, drunkenness, murder, theft of property, loads of it. And they were made of wood, a lot of their idols as well, or gold. And they bowed down to them. For us, they're different. But you know what was true for the kings? When it wasn't one idol, it was another one. So it wasn't a golden calf, it was a pole. If it wasn't a pole, it was a piece of property. And they had idols. All of the kings. And our hearts are the same as these kings. We create idols. So we all probably don't have the same idol here. We don't have the same sort of things that we worship. We worship different things. But we all have them. And you never without them, really. Because that's what our hearts do. They produce idols that we worship. So there might be glory for yourself, self-promotion, or there might be other people, might be your idol, thrills, pleasure, ease, food, entertainment. Even people worship Elvis, don't they? The church itself could be the thing that's the idol in your life. Preaching, organisation, your family, sports. So it was interesting, I went to Cheney to preach last Sunday evening. I'm going to be there all month. And I was chatting to one guy after church, and we were talking about church and things. And some people know Matt Redman. Matt Redman is a worship leader. And he was saying, it's really strange, he went to a church event the other day, and Matt Redman had groupies. You know, groups like people that like follow after him, looking for his signature. And he was saying, it's so funny, they're all in their 50s. There's a group of 50-year-old women following Matt Redman, looking for his signature. It's like sad, isn't it? That like in the church, even people like Matt Redman, he's an idol to these people, isn't he? They love him, they adore him, they worship him. They want his signature. I don't know if Matt Redman, how he deals with that. It's not his fault particularly, is it? But there's like this idea of like that we place things and people, and even good things, even good people like family and good things. We make them idols, we bow down to them, we worship them. And it's not appropriate, is it? And we're always worshipping. We're always worshipping. We're always having something that we give our time and our attention to. And it should be God, shouldn't it? It should be God that we're worshipping. He should be in that place of worship. And when He's not, we just put another one there. Our hearts create another idol. And Ahab said, one of the kings, he said, this is a light thing. The idol factory of his heart. It's a light thing just putting these things, these places as God. So what is your idol? It's an interesting one. Then. What's your idol? Because it's true that if we're not worshipping God as we truly should, and we all probably would say that yes, at times that is happening in my life, what is your idol then when God's not in that rightful place? Sometimes a good couple of questions that help us find out what our idols are is, what do you truly value? That's one question that can help. What do you really value in life? Another helpful question to find out what your idol is, what is your worst nightmare? What's your worst nightmare? The worst thing that could happen to you, if that was going to happen, what would that be? So for me, one of my worst nightmares is being publicly shamed. So say I did some sin, and then it publicly, like coming out here, so Julian has to stand up at the front and say, we've just found out about Giles, he's been doing this and this and this, and I've got him here on video, look, he's doing this. And that's part two. So that would be one of my worst nightmares. And so I see that for one of my idols there, that would be that people's reputation of me, or my expectation, or pride, isn't it? That I would be valued, that people would see me in a good light, when that's not totally true. So that could be one of my idols, isn't it? And another question might help you identify now is, what could you not cope without? What could you not cope without in your life? Or not, because your brain thinks cleverly, you not cope, oh yes, water. Not if you couldn't cope without, but what one thing would you really hate to lose? Because you know you might be able to cope without it, but what one thing would you hate to lose? And you know what? Our hearts are idol factories, yeah? We produce them, and that's what happens to the kings, and they encourage others into it, and that's what happens to us when God is not in the right place. But a good thing to do is when you realise this, is to be aware of it. And when you go to an AA meeting, that's what they say, don't they? I haven't been to them, so I don't know this from TV, I don't know if they really do it. But they say, hi, don't they? My name's Giles, and I'm an alcoholic. And that's the sort of attitude we need to be to our idols, isn't it? And that's what we are. That's what we need to be. So when we come to church, hi, I'm Giles and I'm an idolater, and my idol this week is. That's the truth. We need to be aware of it and name it and label it. Because what we'll do is, we'll think, no, God is the one we worship, God is the one we bow down to, He's our God. But then, when He's fallen off the right place in our life, and something else there, what we just say is, I'm a Christian, I worship God. And we won't be even thinking about these other idols because we're thinking they're a Christian. But yes, we are believers, and God has placed us love upon us, and even though we do worship other things, he's got his hand on us, hasn't he? But there's still these other things that we need to be aware of, and we need to be aware in our life, but what actually is in this place? You might be saying it's alright to admit, yes, I know God doesn't always sit in the rightful place. Well, who does then? And you want to know who that is. Do you know what? It's a horrible thought, isn't it? But like, I'm married to Lauren, and I'm her husband. But I want to know if there's someone else that she was thinking of as husband. So I mean, I want to know who that person was, or what that person named. Do you want to want it out there? And that's that because God is jealous of these idols. Yeah. So you can understand from God's picture, God would want that idol named, wouldn't he? But you should want that idol named as well. You wouldn't want it hiding in your life, like it's lurking around the corner, and you don't know, but it's got a hold of you. And you know the big things about idols is that we think we are in control of the idol, don't we? Yeah. So if your idol is your appearance and in how wonderful and amazing you look, and it probably is, because I can see it if you were doing lots of work on yourselves, and you were looking beautiful. And but maybe that's probably it, isn't it? And what you think is that you think you're in control of that idol. It pleases you to look good in front of everyone, yeah? But what you're doing is you are having to sacrifice your time, your energy, your money on buying your products and looking in the mirror, and you're losing out on lots of things doing that. But you think you're in control, but really this idol has got control of you. It's taking your time, it's taking your energy, it's taking your money, it's sucking you dry. And that's what idols that aren't God do to you. They suck you dry. They take all your life and they rob it from you. And they get you to invest it in whatever it is, whatever it may be. And some of them are good, that's why it's tricky, isn't it? Some of them like family, and like Matt Redman is a good guy, I think. But like, it's not right that someone's worshipping Matt Redman and not Jesus, is it? And Matt Redman won't be good for them, even though he isn't a totally bad person. So what was the first point? Anyone remember? And they did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and your sin affects everyone, doesn't it? And then we have this idea from the kings of idols, and we just create different idols, don't we, that take place. And so we need to be aware of our idols, we need to name and shame them. And then the last point is we get some good kings, a couple of good kings, and they come from the line of Judah, and that's where the promised king is to come, who's going to rescue us from our sin. Talking about Jesus. And that's why it's interesting that the good kings we get come from that line of Judah, in the place of Judah. And they're called Asa and Jehoshaphat, and it says that they did right in the eyes of the Lord. Basically what they did is they removed the idols from the land. They got rid of them. And so it's one, and then it's Asa, and then his son Jehoshaphat. And the ones that Asa didn't get rid of, Jehoshaphat, he finished off the work. So the son remained, a few remained, a high place. Idols didn't get happened. Now when Asa got rid of idols, he had to, it's hard work. Removing an idol is not easy, okay? People were worshipping them, people were giving their time to them, and Asa comes in and he did what was right. He got rid of these idols. And it was hard, and it was painful, and it was close, okay? So what he had to do is his mother-in-law had this Asherah pole and was worshipping. So he had to remove her from a place of authority in the kingdom as well. He had to sort her out. And sometimes when you remove idols, it'll be hard for yourself, also other people won't want you to. Other people won't want you to. Because they might have the similar idol, and if they see you getting rid of their idol, they're thinking, no, it makes me feel guilty. That I must get rid of my idol. Now let's all just worship idols together, and all be happy with that. Let's not speak into one another's lives about each other's idols. Let's all get on together nicely. Let's just foster them nicely. We'll have God, and we'll have him in his place, but we will have some idols as well. But you know, when you remove the idols, it's painful, and it will affect other people around you, and it can be a bit brutal. And it affects families, and it affects relationships, and there's a cost. There's a cost to following Jesus, to doing that work of removing idols from your life. Jesus said, when you want to be my disciple, you need to weigh up the cost. So if you want to follow me, it's like a man going to war, and he looks at his troops and thinks, can I actually do this? Can I achieve this? And he says it's like a man building a tower. Have I got the resources to make this happen? And it's hard work, and you need to weigh up, can I do this? Have I got that energy? Can I really defeat these idols? Can I work it out? Can I do it? And Paul said, when he said about the subject, he says, the sin in his life, he has to put it to death. Now that's strong language, isn't it? Put it to death. That's hard work. I don't know if you've ever killed anyone. No, I don't know if you've ever killed a chicken. You know, I know so my sister-in-law, she has chickens, and she looks after them. But you know, sometimes when they're getting lame and that, you need to kill them. She can't do it. She can't do it. And sometimes they had this, what was this animal? It's an animal anyway. I can't remember a chinchilla or something like that. And the chinchilla was dying and that, and they wanted to, and she really couldn't kill it. And what they've got is they've got a granddad, not my dad, but her dad, who he comes around and basically kills the animals for them. It's funny because my nephew was telling me about it. Oh, he's poorly, granddad's coming round. And they were saying that there's going to be blood against the wall and stuff. I don't know how but it's hard, isn't it? And even killing an animal, sometimes we haven't got it in us, have we? Like to wring the neck of a chicken or whatever you'd have to do. It's hard, isn't it? And like, some of us say, we ain't got the bottle for that. And it's true of our idols, we haven't got the bottle. Like, we haven't got the bottle to kill them, to sort them out. But that's what we need to do. We need to look them in the eye and think, I'm going to beat you, I'm going to defeat you. That's the way we need to view our idols. Not I'm going to let you, I'm going to foster you, or allow you, or find a place for you where you fit in my life. No, they're to be put to death. And it's interesting, later on in the Kings, when there's Elijah, a prophet, and they have a competition between the false gods and Elijah and his God, and they said, let's see who's the true God. So they say, what we do is we need to create some fire, create some wood, okay, 2 piles of wood, like an altar where they sacrifice things. And so you have a go at starting a fire. You're not allowed to use matches or whatever they had in that day, lighters, I'm sure they didn't have them. But you're not allowed to cheat. You've got to pray and do whatever you do and ask God to like rain fire on it. And he gave him a couple of days and nothing happened, no fire. Then he got his wood and he got people to dig a trench around it, and he got people to pour water all over it, yeah? Loads of water, and then he prayed and fire came from heaven. God proved that he was God. And then what Elijah did is, which was a bit shocking to all of us, he said, now what we do is gather up all of your priests and crazy gods and crazy idolatry and just slaughter them all. Slaughter them all. Now, we in our eyes just see that as evil, don't we? Just totally evil, killing people like that on mass. But as I said, when we look at things from the eyes of God, we see future generations, don't we? Where he doesn't just see one act, but the whole big picture. And I'm not saying that we should go around slaughtering people, but you should slaughter your idols. You should have that mindset to your idols that you want to remove them. You want to get rid of them. So the general flow of life is away from God. The kings at the top, in this picture, it's away from God. And the rulers in our nation, it's going to be away from God. And our hearts, it's going to be generally away from God unless we keep stirring ourselves to follow God. And keep asking God to work in our hearts. And also, the other thing was, the people around us also, in their hearts, their flow is away from God. So what we have is, it comes to conclusion, what the picture is, you're swimming, okay? And you're swimming against the torrent, aren't you? You're swimming against water that's pushing you the other way. And when you're not swimming, where are you going? Yeah, you're going with the flow, aren't you? So when you're not swimming, you just carry on with the flow. But what you need to do is we need to keep swimming. We need to keep swimming. That means we need to keep trying to defeat those idols. We need to keep trying to kill them. And I don't know if you've ever watched Finding Nemo. Yeah. And do you remember the scene where the fish get caught in a big net, yeah? You get that? So, and Nemo's one of those fish, isn't it? Oh, yeah, it's Nemo, isn't it? Yeah. And his dad's in the fish tank in the dentist, isn't he? Right. Some of those people are like, what is going on? Everyone, huh? Oh, he's all around. Nemo's in there and his dad, that's right. Yeah, Nemo's in the fish tank in the dentist and his dad's in the sea. And they all get caught in a big net, like a fishing net. And do they all know what happens? Well, they're all swimming, all in their different type of people swim beside you. Helps people give up their idols. When you give up idols, it helps other people give up idols. It makes a difference. It's basically like saying, oh, it's alright to do whatever I like so I don't hurt anyone. It's like saying your life is utterly meaningless. That the only real effect that your life has is on yourself. No. We all are like interconnected, aren't we? And our lives are not meaningless, but they're significant. And the way you live your life is significant. You need to swim against the tide of godlessness. And for you, that might be getting one thing sorted out this week. That might be, next week I'm going to come to church. That's all. Maybe that's that one thing that's going to keep you swimming. Maybe it's this week I'm going to phone another believer. Maybe it's this week I'm going to make sure I pray in the week. And I'm going to swim like that. Maybe it's having someone over your house that's also a believer. But you need to keep swimming. And you need to weigh up the cost and choose to keep swimming against the tide of godlessness. But the good thing is that, you know, when these kings came, these good kings, Asa and Joshaphat, they destroyed. I was going to be a short preach, it's gone a long time. They got rid of like the idols, didn't they? And that was good. But sickness was still in the kingdom, wasn't it? Illness was still in the kingdom. They still had enemies that came and tried to beat them up, even though they were good kings. But there's one king, isn't there? And this king came and he defeated death, didn't he? He defeated death. And he died on the cross and came back to life. He defeated death. He overcame sickness and healed people. He brought about peace within people's minds and hearts. And now this king, Jesus, he comes to bring in a new kingdom. The kingdom of Asa and Joshaphat was better than the others. They destroyed idols. They made a good culture for godliness. But there needs to be, Jesus needs to be on the throne for us to overcome all those other obstacles in our lives. To defeat death and sickness and illness and pain and suffering. To come and wipe away the tears of our heart. And you know what? The more godlier we are, the better our culture will be, yeah? And the better it will be for us here now. But you know what? We're never going to get a godly king in place, really, are we? And if we do, they die and it goes bad and sour. And that's what happens in nations. But Jesus is going to return, isn't he? He's going to come as the King of all kings. And he's going to come as the King who's defeated death. The King who's consistently good. The King who's overcome sickness and disease. And he's going to come and reign on his throne in the kingdom that you can be part of. His kingdom of his people. One where God dwells with his people and makes things good for his people. And we have a king like that. And we have a kingdom to look forward to like that. But while we're here, we need to swim. And we need to keep swimming.